Hi, Anodea. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Lillian. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So today, I have Anodea Judith here. She is a what's called a prophet of our time, a groundbreaking thought leader who is the founder and director of the Sacred Centers. She's a writer, a therapist, a spiritual teacher. She teaches workshops around the world and has most recently, come out with the book, The Global Heart Awakens. You may also be familiar with her previous works, Wheel of Life, A User's Guide to the Chakra System, or what I was most familiar with was Eastern Body, Western Mind. I know that that has had a huge impact in the way people think about their own systems. So I'm really excited to have you here today. Mostly here at the One Question, we talk about life purpose, and I know in your book, in your most recent book, The Global Heart Awakens, you have a really unique way of talking about purpose. So I'm really excited to talk about that a little later. But first of all, I wanted to ask you. You um, at least from the outside, it looks like you have such a clear calling. You have a clear path that you're walking. And I'm wondering, was there a point when you questioned what you were here to do? Or were you born knowing?
I don't think there was. I think that I was one of the lucky people that discovered it early on. Now, it's changed a few times over the course of the years. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a therapist so bad that I was taking college courses at night while I was still in high school in
Mm.
psychology to get started. And then I did that for a long time. But as I was healing, people in my psychotherapy practice, I kept saying, well, what is the culture that allows such things to happen to their children? What
Yeah.
are the assumptions of the culture? That took me into the research for the Global Heart Awakens. When I discovered the chakra system, I just felt like the shudder of energy going through me, and I knew I had discovered a valuable key that was my life's purpose. I just knew it as soon as I heard the word.
So, um, you've been doing this work for a long time, and you're saying that you started doing the research when you first started your psychology practice for this book?
Yeah, I actually wrote Wheels of Life, my first book, before I finished my undergraduate education.
Hmm.
And I actually used it as part of my application to graduate school.
Wow. Wow.
So I wrote that before I even did my graduate training in psychotherapy.
Wow, that's amazing. So, when you were, well, I guess psychotherapy is a bit more of a traditional path, but when you started to get more into the chakra system and more of a Eastern approach, did you encounter any either self doubt or misgivings in your own clarity, or did you get any naysaying from other people that it was not a practical choice, or?
Well, at first, when I tried, the chakra work came first.
Hmm.
I just had an intuitive understanding of the chakras from the get go, and then I
Yeah.
would try to explain it to people, and they'd kind of draw a blank, like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I had to learn to express it in very mundane terms.
Mm.
It was that came first. I went back to graduate school afterwards
Right.
to fill in the more standard stuff.
Right.
So, I don't think there was a place where I doubted, but I do think there was a time when it was very difficult because people just didn't see the point. They didn't understand why should we study chakras. And my goal was to make chakras a household word,
Well,
and I think it has become that over the
definitely.
40 years. I've been working with it for 40 years. Um, and I don't think only because of me. I mean, other writers have written about it too and popularized the word. But it was, I remember my first husband, the father of my child, back when I was pregnant and, had a young child, and I was doing healing work and I was working on the manuscript for Wheels of Life, and he kept saying, why don't you just go out and get a real job? He worked in computers, why
Yeah.
don't you do something that pays decently instead of this? And it was funny that, several decades later, we weren't together anymore, but he was out of a job because he'd been laid off and couldn't get rehired, and I was doing well.
Yeah.
So, his profession had kind of dried up and they were hiring younger people, and mine was maturing.
So I have a question. I mean, that's a really remarkable thing. I mean, it's a remarkable thing when the person that you're partnered with, person who, is your team member, is saying, this is, come on, like, get real.
Yeah.
That's a pretty remarkable thing to stay true to your course. Was that hard? Were there moments where you're like, maybe I should just get a job? Or
Well, I mean, certainly I got little odd jobs on the side, to keep going.
Yeah.
And, I had to, but it's like why we weren't together for very long.
Yeah.
So it was not so much that it was hard to stick to my path, it was hard to stay with the marriage.
I think that's an amazing thing, and I hope that, everyone watching this takes that to heart, because there's a few things that I hear in there. Is like, one, it may not, being on your path may not look like, a path paved with gold from the get-go. It may mean, busting tables. It may mean,
That's right.
you take care of yourself until it works, until it starts paying the bill.
Yeah, I mean, I worked as a legal secretary. I did carpentry work. I did, various things to get by as I was putting it together.
Yeah. That's
my
amazing.
main doubt when I was writing Wheels of Life, by that time I was a single mother of a 2-year-old, and that I would actually hire a babysitter for me to have time to write.
Yeah.
And the main thing is that at that time I didn't know whether I'd ever get the book published.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it did get published whether anybody would read it.
Yeah.
And so I really thought to myself, am I sacrificing time with my child to do this mental masturbation of writing a book?
Yeah.
Am I just like fooling myself to be indulging in this writing and sacrificing other things I could be doing? But it wasn't so much a question of discipline. Wild horses could not take me away from that project.
Yeah. I got that.
And
yeah.
Lo and behold, I sold over 200,000 copies. And, it took a long time, but at first it went nowhere, and then it gradually picked up over the years.
So about that first book, I know that you have a really wide variety of interests. I mean, they all come together into one path. I see the interconnectedness, but there's a lot there. I mean, studying, mystic spirituality and the chakra systems and yoga and psychology, there's a lot of different directions. There's a lot to be teaching on in that material.
It's, yeah.
So
that's a struggle too.
Yeah. So I'm wondering how, not just for the first book, but really for all of them, how do you zero in on one? I mean, writing a book, that's a perfect example of like choosing a path. This is what I'm doing, and I'm not doing anything else right now. There's a million other things that I could do that I'm interested in, and I'm doing this. Yeah.
Well, it's really, it's honing the purpose. One thing about the chakra system is both a blessing and a curse. One is that it's got a pattern. If you write a book about the chakras, you write about the first chakra and the second chakra and the third chakra, or like we did in Creating on Purpose, it's the top down, first chakra 7 and 6. And that's actually the book more relevant to this topic. How do you create from your highest purpose to create on purpose, which means deliberately, and to create your purpose?
How to bring
that's what that whole book is about. It's the top down manifestation. But the chakra system, it's the outline is already there.
Yeah.
You write about the first chakra, you write about the second. And my different books was one about the philosophy of the chakra system, one about the psychology of the chakra system, one about how you manifest using the chakras, and the Global Heart Awakens is looking at the cultural shifts in terms of the chakras.
Right.
So the chakras were always the backbone. They were the lens. And then I would say, how does this lens look like through this? I suppose it's sort of like chicken soup for the soul and chicken soup for the teenage soul and chicken soup for the elderly soul. You get a theme and then it can apply in different directions.
Got it. And the chakras as a theme was kind of given to you. It wasn't something that you honed in on or something that you sought after. It was just that came into your life and it spoke to me.
Yeah. It spoke to me with a passion. And I just started looking at everything through the lens of the chakras, and of course, anything you're into, you start talking to your friends about it, and then my friends would say, "Oh my God, I just want to sit here and listen to what you have to say. This is so cool. You ought to write a book about that." And so I did.
Yeah. I'm just curious, out of my own curiosity, because of my own background, if you had obstacles that you were overcoming in your childhood that brought you to psychology. I mean, I don't think most high schoolers are trying to become psychotherapists.
I honestly did. When I was 11 and 12, my parents had a very messy divorce. Mm-hmm. And they both kind of came to me to try and solve their problems. It's like, oh, what do we do about this? She's always doing that. He's always doing that. And I was kind of caught in the middle.
Yeah.
And, of course, at 11, 12, I was totally ill-equipped to be able to be a psychotherapist for them. Yeah. And I think that's probably where it started, is I wanted to fix my crazy family.
Yeah.
And was even asked to. Even after my mother remarried, she used me as a sounding board about her relationship. So I think there's a part of me that loves to see couples come back together. I mean, right before this interview, I just did a session with a couple, and I love those moments where they say, "Oh, yes, I really do love you." That probably heals something in my own heart from that period.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I want to reflect that back again to my audience. I know that a lot of times we look at our dynamic childhoods as kind of these bowling balls that we have to lug into our future and overcome. But I think that generally it's actually the opposite. What we think is going to be a hindrance to us ends up being a gift. I mean, really anything in your life can be an asset to living a purposeful life as soon as you say so.
Like sand in the oyster produces the pearl.
Yeah.
So the irritation or the wound actually produces a gift.
Yeah, and that's I believe that's a part of the design. Purpose is anytime we talk about purpose, we're talking about something larger than ourselves. We're talking and that there's a play between what you're given from that larger entity, whether you think about it as God or collective consciousness or just the biological world we live in. There's a play between what you're given and then what your gifts to give are.
Exactly. There's an expression that your life is God's gift to you. What you make of it is your gift in return.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in our book, Creating on Purpose, and also the workshop, we actually take people through a life purpose divination. And we have them go on a meditation that's guided from, just before you came into this world, what were you trying to incarnate for? And then looking along a timeline at any points of aliveness or impact in your life. To say, what were you doing? Maybe you were playing outside with friends. Maybe you were helping in the kitchen. Maybe you were creating some art. What were you doing? Including negative impacts, like a divorce or a loss of someone or, moving around a lot or something. Because both the negative and the positive can feed your life force,
Yeah.
You may have been adopted and then decide to be a champion for adopted children.
Yeah.
You may have lost a parent and you decide to make a group for people who were grieving.
Yeah.
So it can be both negative and positive. And then to look from the present time into the future, have them put it like each one of these images in a basket and imagine you're taking from the basket, giving out. Because then you're living with your purpose, and to see what you're doing all the way up to your deathbed. And you imagine laying on the deathbed saying to your family and loved ones, well, I did it. I did my purpose. And here's what I did. And then looking at that, and we also teach that life purpose, people sometimes confuse it with marching orders.
Yeah.
Purpose might be to work with children. Marching orders might be to start an orphanage. But life purpose could be fulfilled by being a teacher, a clown, a
mom.
A mom, exactly. A big brother, a big sister. It could be fulfilled a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's the vision. The vision is the vehicle in which you fulfill your purpose.
Yeah.
But the purpose is more general, like to make people laugh or to create beauty or to enjoy the outdoors, or to turn people on to new ideas. That's more like a life purpose. And then the vehicle, the vision is, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to write a book or have a TV show or start a business or, how do I fulfill my life purpose in that?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that a lot of times people can get caught up when it's marching orders. Am I marching in the right direction or the wrong direction? Is this the right path? Is this the wrong path? Like,
exactly.
If you're 2 steps off, then you're wasting your life. And,
yeah, exactly.
It creates this kind of significance and weight to your choices that make it really difficult to be creative and listen and have an open heart and actually live purposefully.
Yeah, and they forget their life purpose in the marching orders. Oh, I'm supposed to do this, but they forget that the life purpose underneath is to make people laugh or to be creative or to heal.
Yeah, I know that.
It's much more general.
Yeah, I know that I struggle with that myself. I mean, once you set a course based on inspiration, based on your heart, you're on that course, and then it still is a practice to come back to, why are you on that course? Why are you on that course? Is it still the right course?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I've definitely...
It's this thing you're fulfilling in that course, because it doesn't so much matter which course you take, as long as you're clear on what you're up to in taking that.
Yeah. One thing that I hear a lot from my audience is that that whatever they're interested in doesn't have staying power. Like, that they're interested in something and then they lose interest in it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And while there may be a lot of different things going on, one thing that I think about when I hear that is the times that I've spent, 3 or 4 months on a program or a product that I've then canned because it wasn't the right thing to be working on anymore. It was the right thing when I started it, but it just wasn't resonating anymore. And it doesn't mean that I shouldn't have been doing it, but
that's right.
Things
do change, and we have to help people sort out whether it's just because an obstacle arose, and obstacles are natural.
Yeah.
In the manifestation process, master manifestors simply handle the obstacles. Other people say, oh, the universe is telling me I shouldn't do this because suddenly I don't have the money, or suddenly this came up.
Yeah.
That's just an obstacle.
It just didn't work out. I hear that all the time. It just didn't work out. No, if it didn't work out, it means that you stopped trying, and maybe that was the right action. But things will work out so long as your life force is still engaged with them. So, go ahead.
And so it's a judgment call to figure out when we turn loose of it because it really isn't right, and when we're just copping out from an obstacle.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and it's hard to have a magic formula for that, but I would say, first of all, ask yourself, is this just an obstacle?
Yeah.
And is this what I really want to do?
Yeah, and I would say that the magic formula is, and nobody wants to hear this, least of all me, is having a mindful practice, having a meditation practice.
Absolutely.
Because if you have self-awareness and you have a sense of how you respond, what your reaction world is like, then you start to notice the patterns. Oh, I do this when obstacles show up. Or this is my internal cue to move in a different direction, and you can start to distinguish those different things.
That's right, yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your book. So I know in your book, I really appreciate, by the way, you mentioning this other book that I hadn't even, I didn't know about.
This is more in line of what we're talking about, creating on purpose, the spiritual technology of manifesting through the chakras.
Okay, and I just want to mention that there's a link to Anodea's website where you can find all of her books and her workshop schedule and anything you need to know about working with her. Okay, so, but your latest book...
The Global Heart Awakens.
Yeah. What I really loved about this was this play, I mentioned it earlier in this talk, this play between the larger system, the collective system, and the individual, and this amazing love affair we have with our world. So you talk about the individual purpose as a part of a shift in the planet, and I think generally, even on the one question, we talk about the way I define life purpose is your what you love to do, what you're brilliant at doing, and what adds value to the world around you is one of the ways that we talk
Yeah.
about life purpose. But you're really talking about um, a much bigger game, and I'm wondering how you marry those two ideas of personal purpose inside of.
Yeah. Well, when I look out at the world, I realize that those of us who are alive today have been given an infrastructure that was created by our ancestors, roads and trains and airports and buildings and the internet and telephone system and electrical systems that we can have push button heat and lights and everything. Now, our ancestors long ago didn't have that. We're the generation that gets to have the benefit of all these things. And then I said, but for what purpose have we been given these things? Is the purpose we've been giving them so that we can sit down and zone out on the TV and eat bonbons? Is the purpose so that we can just drive our cars at 90 miles an hour on Saturday night with too many beers in our belly? No, there's a higher purpose for which we've been given all these things. And to me, our collective purpose is to create heaven on earth. Plain and simple. We are here to use these tools to create, but to create something, not just our own personal heaven on earth, but something that serves the whole, and that we're creating this whole together. How can we create a world that works for all? How can we create a world that's beautiful, that's sustainable? We've been given a marvelous planet to start with, and there's really no reason why we can't create heaven on earth. We sort of had a philosophy that we leave earth to get to heaven. No, I think we bring it right down here. We manifest it through our own bodies. And that's what we're here to create.
Do you think that it's possible for a personal purpose to be at odds with that greater purpose?
Well, I think that it is, I have an expression that if everyone only pursued their personal dream, we would have a collective nightmare. So most people's personal dream is, I want more. I want more money, I want a bigger house, I want more cars, I want more something, and that's taking from the environment. And, research shows that it doesn't really make anybody happy to have more. But,
I think it's something like after you get to your, like minimum livable expenses. In the U.S., I think the average is $30,000, and then above $30,000 a year, that's average. Of course, there's a big difference depending on where you live. But if you make more than $30,000 a year, you're not any happier than making less.
Other people make less, and sometimes they're happier. So, if we don't have enough money to pay our rent, then we have to do that before we have any time left over for something else. So like you say, you have to get to a certain point where you satisfy your survival needs. But then the question goes, well, what can I contribute? And that brings the greatest joy. And especially co-creating what we can contribute.
Yeah. So, I don't know, I guess there's something in there that I still have a question about regarding people's personal purpose. Because you talk about what you said earlier about purpose being kind of handing out back what you've been given. So if that is your way of thinking about purpose, is there really such a thing as individual purpose? Is there really such a thing
Yes.
as
I believe there is. And I believe our individual purpose has to do with being exactly who we are. If you look at people like the cells in your body, you have blood cells, and you have bone cells, and you have muscle cells, and they each have a purpose. And that purpose is unique. The blood cells and the bone cells don't have the same purpose. One is to provide structure, and the other is to carry oxygen. So I believe that we are all created for a purpose. And if we can be truly ourselves and truly let our own passions and gifts shine, then we will be living our purpose. The purpose isn't to get something, though. The purpose is to give something. And I think that's the main difference.
Got it.
You know, and all of us, I think, have something we want to offer. And that, our purpose lies along those lines. Our purpose is not just to make more money. You know, unless you want to make money so that you can be a philanthropist and support other organizations. You know, that's a different thing.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to share with us about your book or anything you're working on right now?
Well, just that I think the purpose is to create heaven on earth. I think that in the book I say evolution is the God's way of making more gods. So I think that the initiation we're facing on this planet is asking us to create a miracle, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And I think that is the challenge of initiation, is to do something you've never done before, to awaken latent powers within you. And I think the culture needs to awaken its latent powers of cooperation and collaboration in order to figure out all the things on this planet and create a miracle. And that miracle can be our initiation into divinity, so to speak. And that's what it's going to take. That's what's required, and I think we're up to it.
That's wonderful. And that's what's happening in your workshops. That's where you guys are.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with me today and having this conversation. And thank you everyone for watching. And again, you can find Anodea's website below this video, and you can find all of her workshop schedule and her list of books. And I hope you guys enjoyed being with us.
Thank you, Lillian.